All right, and we're back. So I'm going to make our transaction now. Finally, we're here. We're doing it. This is the tough part. Are you ready? I hope you are. I hope you are. So usually we build our transactions in the TX Legos. It's very similar to our form Legos in at least file structure. So you'll see in contract TX where we are sort of our mix in, where we kind of just spread out all these different collections of contract interactions into this object. And you can see that we have all of our Moloch transactions here, all of our minion transactions, like standard minion transactions. A lot of these aren't calling arbitrary contract or external smart contracts. These are just, basic interactions, move funds here, cancel, withdraw, etc. What we're building is pretty complicated, and there's a little helper function to help us make these multi-transaction Lego blocks a little easier. And you can take a peek at one. This is the disperse boost here, and you can notice that we're using a function. I'd like to keep all the values in here constants. So we can be rest assured that the function, it'll return out something that looks a bit like this. Just a big, massive blob of data for the app to read and interpret into a smart contract interaction. So we're going to jump back to our form Lego, not the transactions, because I think it would be very valuable if we built the transaction Lego on the form Lego page, just to show where they match up, where the value of the form, how that gets, well, you won't see how, but you'll see what you're going to match to what, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So we're going to just call it TX for now, const TX, and it's going to get a much better name later, I promise. These are the build multi-TX action here. That's the helper function that I was talking about in the disperse boost. And we're just going to pass in an object here, actions. And we are going to pass in those actions. So let me just save here quickly. What are the actions? Well, remember in the mock-up that we did in the multi-TX builder, those are remember the two actions that we did. I'll just open it up for a visual reference here. That'll be nice. In here, we made a transaction 1 and a transaction 2. The first transaction was an approve, and then the second transaction was the actual stake. So we need to record this in static data so that we don't have to fill out that big form every time. We can just have a form that is set up and calls that contract out automatically. And then you can build a form for remove items from stake or pull just the amount of tokens that you've earned, whatever floats your boat. And we'll go into disperse by going just the disperse transactions here. And we'll notice, the actions are another array. I'm just going to copy and paste. We'll speed this up a little. Back to the swapper boost forms. There we go. So we copied this here. And you can see there's a few things that we'll need to import. I don't know how you guys like to do this, but I just go into here and kind of delete the last character and re-enter it. And then I hit tab, kind of take a peek at where it's coming from and make sure that I'm getting the right thing. That's really important. Details to JSON is, I guess it's a little cryptic naming there, but what happens is we serialize, not serialize, but we get a bunch of the details that we get from the form, and usually it's going to be things like title and description and link, and we turn that into a JSON string and store that in a proposal itself. in the proposal entity as JSON data, or like a string that we bring back into the app and then rehydrate so you can see all your proposal metadata. And so right now we're bringing in the map for dispersed token, which we don't want. So dispersed token looks for the title, and then it looks for a title here. And description, same thing here. Remember the dot notation from earlier? You're going to see a lot of this. We're not going to use dispersed token. Right now, we're just going to use a very simple, maybe the standard proposal here. And then maybe, we'll get into something a little bit more elaborate later on. So we'll just use standard proposal. Perfect. Now, we have to start thinking about what our target address is. Well, we went over this a little bit in the last video, but our target address is going to be not just token address, it's going to be the staking token address. And there's a good thing, a really good thing that we had thought of that beforehand, and instead of having to build this and then figure that out after. That definitely didn't happen to me while I was planning this. No. And then we are choosing the function name. And luckily for us, it's actually the exact same function name that that we're going to be using. So we're also calling approve, as the other boost was as well. Most boosts probably will be calling approve if it's in any way involved with the ERC20. At the beginning, you need to give the contract that the minion is calling permission to spend the funds. Next, remember when we went into chain.js and added swapper staking? Well, this was so that we could reference, once the transaction fires, we could reference this registry here and access this address. And why wouldn't we just put the address in directly? Well, we might be on a different network. And if you're making a boost that's going to be multi-chain, you're going to want to go find all the different addresses for as many of these as you can, basically, and add them in. So we're going into the context data because that's where we store this data. Is we put it inside of a blob of context data. This data is more of a constant, not context data if we want to get super specific, but we blend it in with all of our React context store. So it's coming from context data. Yep, chain config. And then we're going into swapper staking. Whenever we use this, and just we're going to be going and finding this for the address that we're currently on. Just to clarify that. And then remember when I had us bring that contract in? Well, now we're actually going to be making use of it. So here we're just going to put swapper staking. Done. And here we go. We got disperse token simple. Well, that's not the thing we're going to be calling. We're going to be calling stake. It's a very simple name. It's very nice. So we'll do all the arguments at once here. So the args are probably the toughest part of building boosts. We have to find the arguments that these smart contracts are going to be looking for. So we know from before when we made our function that we have a spender and an amount for an approve. But we might want to look at that, or so I guess we could go to the ERC20 JSON and try to like look through this, or we could go to Etherscan, kind of whatever way makes sense for you. That would be fine. I tend to use the transaction builder. I would enter the contract address here, and then I would enter the method that I was going to call, in this case approve, and then you would get all the methods here. So if I wanted all the methods that Bonanza Bro, our minion, has, and I was making say like a minion transaction that interacts with another minion, I could just put that in here. And oh, look at all this. You have all the functions that are available to for your minion to call on a minion. Fun little exercise there. So we have this left over from the disperse boost, so that's pretty handy. I always recommend kind of looking at what other people are doing and just kind of getting a sense of how this all comes together. This way of building boosts and additional functionality onto an app is is very strange, I'll admit. So the more you can do to kind of like take a look at what other people are doing, ask questions, and learn from all the other community developers or core developers at DAOhaus, the better, the easier this will be. So we're going to be switching our args here. So we have context data, chain config, swapper, staking, because we're going to be approving the staking contract. So we wanted that contract address right there is our first argument. And then we want the amount that we're going to be approving. So how do we get access to amount? Well, we got to get it from our form, and its name is amount. So I think what most people would be tempted to do is just put amount. And I think in a perfect world, that's how we would build it. But right now, what we do, just because this is still a ragtag system, what we do is values. Values is the object that comes from the form, and then values.amount. And again, I think I may have mentioned this, but this first dot and the subsequent dots that follow, they let the form builder and the transaction builder know that this is something we're going to be searching for. What are we searching for? Well, if you go into values, you're going to be searching the values that come from the form. If you go into context data, you're going to be searching the context data or all the different state in the React app. We bundle it up into one single store, and then we have a tree of data that you can traverse and kind of search through. We have a little automatic searcher there. And there are tools you can kind of console log out the big blob of data and then look at your args and sort of get them more and more exact over time. So this, I believe, is done. We got values.staking token address. That's where we're going to be getting this transaction from. And that's the target contract that we're going to be calling. We have the right ABI. We have the function name here. And then we have the context data, .chainconfig.swapper.staking. That is where we're going to be getting the address for the staking contract that we're going to approve. And this is where we're going to be getting the uint amount that we're going to be approving as well. This one, we're going to be getting the same thing as this. Let's try to highlight it and see. Yep. Okay. Same thing. It's the target contract, chain config, swapper, staking. That is going to be our second transaction that we're going to be calling. And then this is the ABI. We have our function name here. And then our first and only argument here is going to be the amount that we're staking. So what we'll do is we'll just copy and paste from this over here. And then that is our transaction. What I find with a lot of building these transactions is that they do not always go well on your first try. It takes a little bit of kind of just combing through and making sure you have this string or that odd string right. But there are logs and ways to sort of debug and check to make sure that you have things right. So let's take a look and just give it a go in the next video.